Hello and welcome to, well, an inside Evo from abroad. Japan, no less. As you can see the delightful Tokyo skyline behind me. And the reason is it's the Tokyo Motor Show, and I've been having a poke around at everything that is being unveiled today. Starting with, well, probably the star of the show, which was the Mazda RX Vision concept. Now, this is obviously sort of precursor to what would be, I suppose, an RX-9 potentially. And the big news is that Rotary is back. We're not quite sure in what form, but it's, they say they've managed to overcome some of the problems with it, namely, I suppose, principally efficiency and sort of emissions. So that's really quite exciting, and it just looks absolutely stunning. I think there's something of the AMG GT about it perhaps, but all this obviously really low because it is still a concept. Carbon wheels, carbon brakes, and just a fabulous looking car. So that's really quite exciting from Mazda. Elsewhere, what have we got? Well, Nissan was on stand just next door, and we saw it in I think it's called Fire Night, this new colour for their concept car, which has been designed for Gran Turismo Vision. It's called the 2020. You can see what they've done there, Vision 2020. Terribly clever. It's a bit like the sort of the Bugatti. There's nothing like the sort of the details, I suppose, in terms of sort of aero figures and all that sort of thing. But it's just really nicely sort of wrought. There's some detailing which you might see on future GTRs, and I love the exit of the exhaust, which is just behind the front wheel, sort of tucked into the side skirts. And of course, you've still got the 4 rings for the GTR. Sort of GTR 4-ring lights at the rear, which is also very cool indeed. Talking of rear lights, we've got the BMW M4 GTS on show here, which is very nice, and it's got its OLED organic LED lights at the rear. And I do like the front splitter in particular. It does look very cool on that car. The rear wing, bit demure like the last M3 GTS that was in orange, as you might remember, but titanium exhaust, and it's a very funky looking thing. The carbon bonnet under the studio or show lights looked absolutely amazing and just really nicely sort of sculptural, I suppose. So that was a very cool thing from BMW. Nice to see it in the metal, as it were. Elsewhere, Porsche had a couple of things unveiled, both four-wheel drive, but slightly different. There was a Macan GTS, and that's now putting out 355 brake horsepower and 369 pounds-foot of torque from its 3-litre turbocharged V6. Now, you might sort of, if you know your Macan range, you'll know that sits actually between the Macan S and the Macan Turbo, so it's not the most powerful Macan in the range, but it's 15mm lower on its PSM, gets sports suspension as standard, some rather nice RS Spider 20-inch wheels in black as well. So it's a very cool looking thing, and it promises to be the most sporty of the Macans to drive, possibly the most sporty SUV that Porsche has yet done. Look at that, we're talking about sporty SUVs in Porsche. Anyway, elsewhere on the stand, there was also the unveiling of the new turbocharged Carrera 4. It was in 4S guise with the sports exhaust on the back, which people seem to be really divided about, those sort of central exhausts, which I think look really cool. Of course, at the back as well, you've got the light strip along the rear, which is distinctive and shows that it's the four-wheel drive version, as do the wider 44mm wider rear hips, which add a bit more purpose to an already purposeful looking car. Power for that, 414 brake horsepower, 369 pounds-foot of torque, and if you add Sport Chrono and a PDK into that, then it'll do 0 to 60 miles an hour in the 4S version in just 3.8 seconds, which is pretty impressive. The Macan, by the way, does 0 to 60 in 5.2 seconds. So yes, so that's what there was from Porsche. Elsewhere, well, we had Subaru showing some things, which was interesting. The new Impreza, which is obviously sort of Impreza, no longer can we call sort of the hot ones Impreza. I'll get onto that in a minute. But it was a nice looking thing, sort of more hatchback, so going back to what we sort of, they're sticking with hatchback. It seems to be a body style which suits them, obviously people like, and it's not a bad looking thing, I have to say. There was also the S2007 Yellow Edition Nürburgring Challenge Pack car, which they're only producing 100 of, but had a rear wing, and it's obviously to celebrate that their motorsport these days. They do a bit of rallying in America, but that's Subaru America. So the factory seemed to be getting behind Nürburgring entries, and this was to celebrate their successes at the Nürburgring. And yeah, it looked cool. It was up to 328 PS. and just, yeah, nice and yellow really. So yeah, but it brought back a bit of the sort of the old memories of the special editions that you'd occasionally see as cool grey imports across in the UK. So that was rather nice to see. Elsewhere, what else did we have? There was all sorts of random stuff. It's an amazing place. It's quite an odd show. So at times it would be very quiet in the halls, and then you'd see sort of, I don't know, there was something where I sat on a chair and was then sort of as Daihatsu, I think, which then it must have been something mobility wise that then sort of put me into the car. You can probably see pictures of that now. That was quite fun. Lots of motorbikes, obviously. Things like the Akabono brakes that you'll see on the McLaren P1, they had a stand there. Öhlins had some beautiful dampers, some Nismo ones that were there, but also for motorbikes and rally cars and all sorts of things. So it's nice to see that stand was just some very cool stuff. Toyota Auto Body, I'll get onto the main Toyota stand in a second, but Auto Body had, it was just this bizarre, I'm not quite sure what it was. It had a sort of fabric roof that would fold back, but the most aggressive sort of front that looked a bit like a sort of one of those sort of old Citroen vans, H vans, that's sort of the word I'm looking for. But yeah, it was sort of a combination between a limo and a minibus and who knows what, and something else there that was a sort of had holographic sort of things on the front windscreen and just a single chair, and anyway, looked quite cool. There was also there was an amazing truck with all sorts of different arms for picking up logs and drilling holes, and yeah, for the logging industry it must have been extremely exciting. It was pretty exciting for me too. Hino as well, which is another brand of Toyota. They had their Dakar truck there, which just, I mean, everyone loves a Dakar truck. They look monstrous and amazing, and it's impossible what they seem to do over a sand dune. And so I had to wander up there and had to sit in that, and amazingly basic inside. It looked sort of several years old and very second-hand, but then it obviously had competed. And I think it had been built for somebody slightly smaller than me because I struggled to bend my legs around the steering wheel. But it was that was nice to be able to go and sit in that. Over on the main Toyota stand, well, it was the S-FR, which we still don't know many details about. It's very yellow, very highlighter yellow, and it does look very cool. I have to say, it's a nice thing that potentially will go up against an MX-5. People are saying the grille, for my taste, was just a bit too gaping, perhaps. But anyway, nice to see it. Nice to see that sort of small car there. There was also the Yaris WRC, which we're very excited about and hope they're going to come along and challenge VW in the WRC. There was also this very bizarre thing with a sort of exoskeleton and rocker arm for dampers up here, and it was fun. Nice to see Toyota having a bit of fun. So there we go. One of the biggest sort of, I suppose, excitements of the show was the new Yamaha sports car. Now, they've worked with Gordon Murray in the past with his iStream concept, and this was the carbon iStream concept. So it's a tubular chassis with then carbon moulded panels that attach to it or are bonded to it, and it's apparently extremely light but also very cost efficient. So it's actually, they're saying it's going to bring carbon fibre to the masses. And anyway, it's a very cute looking little sports car. The interior, I think, has got a bit of Pagani Zonda about it almost. There was a trumpet in the back because obviously Yamaha makes musical instruments. That was a bit random though. But it's a very good looking thing, nice high exit exhaust, no word on sort of what sort of engine it would have in it or anything like that. But there did seem to be paddles behind the steering wheel, which is a shame because we hope for a manual. We sort of like to think if Gordon Murray's going to produce a sports car, we'd have a manual gearbox, but you never know, this is just a concept. Some brakes which looked as though they were from a motorbike because the car only weighs about 750 kilos wet, so that's pretty exciting, I have to say. There was an F-Type coupe with a rear wing on it, which I hadn't seen before, which is quite interesting. Nice dark sort of almost purpley colour as well, that was nice. Honda had their 2 and 4 concept there, which we saw at Frankfurt, and you can click and see a video somewhere else on the website about that, but they changed it to right-hand drive for this show, which I'm not sure many people noticed. I also saw somebody else tweeting saying that the blue liquid in the brake lines was actually mouthwash, which is quite fun. That so it shows it really is sadly a concept, but nevertheless, there we go. Finally, there was a company called or a car called Code 9 by a designer whose name I shall not attempt to pronounce, but will be up on the screen about now, I should think. And there were various concepts of it. There was a hardtop one with a sort of fin at the back that looked as though it was a bit of a sort of Le Mans prototype refugee with that. But then there was a Gulf-coloured sports car, and it was very cool. 350 PS, so what's that? Probably about 344 brake horsepower. Again, 750 kilos weight. Actually, no, it's slightly more than that. It was around 800 kilos curb weight. Manual gearbox, and by looks it had a sort of an Elise chassis, and then sort of various carbon fibre bits inside. But it was it was a nice looking thing. It just had the right sort of proportions and looked so it could be fun. There was also a sort of sprint or hill climb version, a club sport version, if you like, with sort of wheels sort of out on limbs rather than enclosed. And that looked really quite fun as well. So there was also a tractor on the stand and some sort of rotavator and glasses and cutlery and that sort of thing. But fun. That was the sort of wacky thing I was hoping to find here. Sadly, not really many tuners, or hardly any tuners at all here. I was expecting a big haul of those, but no such luck. So you have to put up with some other sort of wacky things. An enormous afro I saw, and some very cool, just wacky, particularly Japanese videos promoting various things on one of the long corridors between the two halls. So there we go. That's everything from Tokyo 2015. A very brief look, I'm afraid, but you'll be able to find lots more details on the Evo website, so click on the link to read about all the stories on all the cars and all the background information. Hope you enjoyed it, and click on the links to go and visit some of our other Motor Show videos. There are various playlists on the YouTube channel.